Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a style I haven't had in a while, and today's offering is from Energy City Brewing Company. They're based in Itasca, Illinois. The specific beer is called Bistro Grande Pink Guava Cotton Candy, and it is a Berliner Weisse. The clock's in at 8% ABV, been brewed, of course, with pink guava, and they state other natural flavors. So I don't know if that means that they did actually add cotton candy to it, or if that's a general vibe. Maybe they added some Belgian candy sugars or cotton candy sugars into the mix. I don't know. The only thing they specified was pink guava and natural flavors. Nonetheless, sounds really intriguing to me. In terms of label art, it really does kind of get you in the mood for maybe cotton candy flavored sour here. Bright pink, big old ball of cotton candy on the front. So looks nice. Let's get this cracked gently. Perfect. And we'll get this poured right in the old glass. Oh yeah, it's a nice looking beer. Most Berliner Weisses are very pale straw yellow, much like a Pilsner. This one, of course, with that pink guava addition, has a pinkish hue to it. It also is significantly thicker than your average Berliner Weisse pouring out of there. It's got actual fruit in it. And of course, 8%, that's way higher than your average ABV range on a Berliner Weisse. Let's hold this up. Yeah, visually, it's very occluded because of that natural fruit addition in the can. In fact, I was being very gentle on the crack because they said to gently rock the can back and forth to let everything, unsettle and mix back into the beer itself. So yes, it is hazy. It is kind of a pinkish orangey hue to it. Head got completely out of the way within a matter of seconds after pouring. That's what we want to see. Let's get right up over it for a sniff. Wow. Okay, so on the nose on this one, you can really smell the sour and the tart and the guava. That is coming through quite clearly. I don't smell anything in the aroma that says, oh, wow, that smells like cotton candy. Not at all. It smells very strongly of pink guava, and it smells nice and tart and sour. There's a little underlying kind of brininess to it. Berliner Weisses are very similar to Goses. They do have a little bit of a briny back to them. And, it's part of what makes them interesting in the grand scope of sours. You don't get it in all beer styles, just these two specific German ones. And I'm a big fan. It smells great, looks great. Let's just jump right in, see what this is about. Oh, wow. Ooh, that's delicious. Yeah, that's really, really nice. That's very well done. So, pink guava cotton candy? Yes, yes to both. The pink guava comes through very, very clearly, and it definitely does taste like cotton candy. It's almost like if your cotton candy sugar was pink guava flavored. That's really kind of what this is bringing me to. It's absolutely delicious. Pink guava is a very nice fruit to use in beer. I've had it in quite a few. It works well in beers. Most of them I've had have been in sours, and it works particularly well in a sour. In terms of the souring profile, the tartness of this one, yeah, there's a little bite up front. It's mild. It's a Berliner Weisse. It's not like a big kettle sour. It's not supposed to be pungently sour. So it is mild, as you would expect. There's a little bit of this underlying kind of malt bill that comes through as well. Despite the intensity of the guava and the cotton candy, after that intensification happens and it settles back down, that's where you can really taste this malt bill. And it's very much classic Berliner Weisse. It's got this grainy quality to it. It's almost cereal-like in the flavor profile. And it's a very nice finish to something as big and fruity and almost sweet, even though it's in a sour beer style format. But it's very, very nice. It really does taste exactly as advertised. And I'm not disappointed in this at all. One thing I can tell you is on the end of the finish, we'll talk specifics, but in terms of texture for this sour, there is only the slightest, very, very slightest of a drying effect. And as I said, it's not pungently sour or tart. That normally is what's going to cause it to dry out a little bit on the back end of the finish. On this one, it's like just a tiny bit of drying on the very tip of the tongue. That's where I'm getting it. So yes, it's there, but it's not, super dry. It doesn't leave you feeling like you have a sandy mouth or anything like that. It still is mostly wet and round to the end, just the slightest suggestion of drying on the very tip of the tongue. Very, very nice. So I'm going to jump back in for the body, let the flavors re-intensify, and I'll pick apart the finish in more detail. I can tell you the mouthfeel feels exactly where you would expect texturally for a Berliner Weisse. We're not talking about the weight of the body itself. We're just talking about its counterpart, the mouthfeel. So it's got that, you can feel the carbonation. This one, as do many Berliner Weisses, when you agitate around the palate, it does get quite creamy. Feels very, very creamy, very silky. So effervescent and creamy. So let's jump in. We'll think of the body, let these flavors re-intensify. We'll talk more in depth about the finish. Very tasty beer. The body on this is a big, full medium, almost bordering on medium heavy. Very different than your average Berliner Weisse, but then again, this has nearly double the ABV and a ton of actual fruit in it. Second sip intensification, it's just as enjoyable as on that very first sip. It really does taste exactly as advertised. Pink guava, cotton candy, it's absolutely delicious. Those two flavors work in tandem. It's like equal 50-50. You get them both at the same time. Neither of them are vying for attention at all. And it's a big burst up front, and it kind of is really intense for about 3-4 seconds, then it dials back relatively quickly. Within about 10 seconds, you just have lingering residual pink guava and cotton candy, and then it's dominant, the underlying malt bill that comes through. And again, yeah, the sour and the tart, it's there. It's up front right when you first swallow, and it's gone in under a second. And it's not sharp at all. It's very subtle. It's just enough to let you know you're drinking a sour beer style. But this one is all about what they did with the flavors, what they added to it, and that is the star of the show. I think this beer is all the better for it. It's delicious. It tastes absolutely delicious. It looks fantastic. This beer has a lot going for it. So there is a big intensity of flavor. And for me, I think that helps really bring out what makes this beer what it is, but it also really helps to kind of bring in a secondary underlying characteristic to kind of match the fullness of the body on this. Like I said, 8%, that's way higher than your average Berliner Weisse ABV, but it's got actual fruit in it, and yeah, it's hefty. It's got weight to it. When I have a weighty beer, I want there to be some other underlying intensity, and this one does it very, very well with its flavor intensity, and the flavors are so good. I am just absolutely pleased with it. In terms of the finish, this one, really, it's about average for a Berliner Weisse. Sure, these flavors are big and bold and intense and up front, but they die down after they bloom relatively quickly. Like I said, after about the 10-second mark, you're really only getting residual pink guava and cotton candy, and its dominant malt bill. And let me say again, the malt bill that they used in this tastes very classic Berliner Weisse. It's very well put together. It's very well constructed. Overall, I think this is an exceptionally well-balanced beer, and I think it's absolutely delicious. This is one of the best Berliner Weisses I've had in quite a while. Granted, it's been a while since I've had one, but this is a very unique flavor combination, and it's absolutely delicious. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we'll get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Energy City Brewing Company's Bistro Grande Pink Guava Cotton Candy, a Berliner Weisse brewed with pink guava and also natural flavors, clocking in at 8% ABV. Energy City Brewing Company is based in Itasca, Illinois. So starting with the aroma. The aroma on this, as with most Berliner Weisses, even with additives, it's not one you're going to pick up as a rule from 1.5 feet, 2 feet away. But when you got right up on it, you could really smell just how intense that pink guava was coming through. There was a suggestion of underlying kind of candiness, sugariness, but I couldn't really say, yeah, it smelled like cotton candy on the nose, but you did get that distinct sour and tart aroma as well, and there was an underlying brininess, more akin to a Goza, but you can often get it on a Berliner Weisse. In the grand scheme of things, this smelled absolutely amazing. The pungency was exactly as expected. Aroma does get a 10 out of 10. for the taste. Oh man, the taste on this was so good. This is easily one of the best Berliner Weisses I've ever had, and I like them all. Just a normal, plain, run-of-the-mill Berliner Weisse, as it were, or one with additives and some inventiveness. This one took the latter path, and really, that pink guava addition and the natural flavors, I have to assume they used either cotton candy sugars, actual cotton candy, or Belgian candy sugars that really played up this cotton candy vibe, because literally the flavor tasted like, it tasted like you were eating pink guava flavored cotton candy off of a stick wrapped at the carnival. Absolutely delicious. Nice little sour and tart up front. It wasn't super sharp. It was there to let you know, yep, that's a Berliner Weisse. And then the pink guava and the cotton candy ran with it. Had this nice intensification over 3, 4, 5 seconds, dialed back down. By about the 10-second mark, you were tasting the underlying malt bill. Absolutely delicious. Taste gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the body, the body on this was significantly different than your average Berliner Weisse, but this was nearly double the ABV and to have a whole real actual fruit in there. The body felt exactly where I expected it would for the style of beer, given how they brewed it in the ABV range. Body does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel on this beer, yeah, it was a little more resistant, again, than your average Berliner, but again, these additives, the ABV range, it does play its part. It felt exactly as I expected, and there was that classic effervescence you could feel texturally, and when you agitated it around the palate, it did get very creamy, which is very typical of the style. Mouthfeel does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the finish on this one, I was actually a little bit surprised. Most sour beers don't have the longest finish in the world, but given the intensity of the flavors on this and the higher ABV, I did expect that the finish was going to be longer than your average Berliner, but it was really just right in the average range. Not to diminish the beer, but it was average, and it was lacking a little bit of that crisp dryness on the end. It was very subtle, and it was just the very tip of the tongue. Other than that, it was very wet and round, which is a little atypical. So grand scheme of things, finish does get a 5 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one, as with most beers, sours included, it's going to try to form a head in the beginning, but in a matter of seconds, it was completely out of the way. That's what you want on a sour. Head and retention does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the appearance, this was an absolutely stunning beer in the glass. It was this nice pink hue, a little bit of an orangey underneath. It's brewed with grain. It's going to add yellows into the mix. But yeah, it was absolutely lovely. Looked pretty much as I expected. Appearance gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this beer I absolutely loved. That I could taste the malt bill as well as the pink guava and the cotton candy flavor, and all equal parts, and they came in at different points in the beer drinking experience. I mean, it was just balanced perfectly. I wouldn't change a thing about this beer if I brewed it in my house. Balance gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible subjectively, I absolutely love this. This was truly delicious. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, is an example of the style. So this is a little different than your average Berliner. Quite a bit higher ABV, but they added a lot more fermentables in it. The fruit, the cotton candy, the whole package of this beer just really worked for me. It didn't suffer really in any category, but finish, sure, there were some elements that are stylistically normal that it only had subtly, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a minor nitpick, and everything else it nailed. And this beer was so good. I think it deserves full marks, and I gave it thus. Example of the style gets a 10 out of 10, which brings the grand total on Energy City Brewing Company's Bistro Grande Pink Guava Cotton Candy to a 95 out of 100. So a long name, quite a mouthful, but absolutely delicious beer. If you're a fan of sours, if you're a fan of fruited beers, this is one to keep on your radar. And I gotta say, if you're not a big fan of sours or ones that are super sour, this is one to keep on your radar. I would say in general, Berliner Weisses and Goses, that's gonna be your two best styles if you don't really like super pungent, in-your-face sour, with still having that underlying characteristic. This had just that presence up front, immediately dialed back, the flavors popped in. Absolutely delicious. I cannot recommend this enough. Truly delicious beer. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop on our videos, go live to YouTube. just turn on your notifications, click that bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.